For many people, he is just the feared bouncer from Berghain. But for me, the whole story of Sven is just a wholesome and inspiring story. Berlin, once a city divided by walls, now united by freedom and expression. This is a story of Sven who became both the face of rebellion and the gatekeeper of one of the most infamous clubs in the world, Berghain. Sven Marquardt grew up in East Berlin. His father was a motorway builder and his mother was a medical technical assistant. Here are the words of Sven growing up in a divided Berlin in the 80s. As a child, we were not really aware what the rest of the world looks like. I didn't question that we couldn't travel since we were in a democratic republic. Of course, since the city was divided, you knew that some relatives lived on the other side of the wall and that you couldn't visit them, but not really why. Sometimes they shipped over presents in nice boxes and these stuff. Overall, it was a peaceful place to be brought up in. Growing up, he described himself as a shy boy. Although during his teenage years, the punk era began to make itself apparent in Prenzlauer Berg in the 80s. Everyone always said he looked so sweet and he's so lovely. But that changed when I became a teenager and broke with all of those constructions. The new wave people dressed differently and opposed the government. They wanted a change just like the rest of the world did. Just in a smaller community, the Soviet sector of Berlin. A problem when I was growing up was to understand that we weren't really free, that we were forbidden to go anywhere. That didn't bother us as children when we had no idea about the size of the world. But when we grew up, we understood more and decided that if we weren't allowed to go to New York, we shall bring what we want to discover here instead. After the fall of the wall, Berlin blossomed into a cultural epicenter, attracting artists, dreamers and visionaries from across the globe. And the two by then divided parts were finally combined again. This also meant that Berlin really had to discover what it stood for. The whole start of becoming a bouncer was through his younger brother Oliver, who was part of Berlin's electronic music scene as a DJ and club organizer. And although Sven wasn't very involved with what his brother organized at first, he agreed to work at the door at the club. Reading people and having a stomach feeling about them made him successful in creating the night environment. At one point he started working for the gay fetish club Ostgut, which later moved of course to the power station and that became Berghain. A lot of people went to the new location and to find the same club that Ostgut was and were disappointed. They told me, "It's not like Ostgut," after entering the new place. And I replied, "No, it's Berghain, and today it's 2004 and not 98 anymore. Ostgut is over." I also find it really interesting to see in how aware he is for the changes of time. But I guess that also have to do with first being brought up in East Berlin and seeing the changes for itself. Even to this day, yes, Berlin is changing, but Berlin will always be changing. Life is always changing. And seeing that Sven was even aware with that from going from Ostgut to Berghain is really inspiring to see. This is really important to see. I never set out to be feared. It's about creating the right atmosphere, letting the right energy in, reading people. It's a skill I've honed, both in photography and at the door. With being a bouncer, he also refound his inspiration for his photography as well. But it wasn't just the streets that called to Sven. Behind the lens of the camera, he found a new way to challenge the status quo. Photography became his way to capture the spirit of rebellion, timeless, raw and unfiltered. Sven's work is raw and it's really interesting to see. The interesting thing is that the model cannot hide. Of course, the photographer cannot hide, but also you cannot hide, and also the intensity that the pictures bring. He combines dramatic art of monochrome contrasting. The ever-changing metropolis of Berlin has shaped Marquardt's sensibility for striking character. In his sense for the unusual is humanity and his artistic subject. When I look at the pictures that the artist makes, it's also in comparison to how Berlin is. Berlin is raw. In Berlin you cannot hide. in Berlin you see everything. And it's the same with the work. And that's also why I really enjoy to see the work of the artist Sven. There is a clear rawness within the pictures that he's making. He's also really representing East Berlin. He has worked with great companies like Hugo Boss and Levi's, but also with Germany's cultural institution Goethe Institute. He strictly uses analog cameras and the use of daylight, and it's really crucial for the photography that he stands for. Sven's body of work also is a test of time, because of the way that he was brought up and also how Berlin changed through the 80s up until now. His photography seems classic. The underlying contents of his images merge past, present and future. I'm not nostalgic for the past, but I still shoot black and white, analog. It's about capturing something deeper. The essence of people, moments that go beyond the surface. His words also show in where he's really aware on where Berlin stands and what the challenges are. The city must maintain the spirit of Berlin, and we must do it together. We must keep promoting diversity and freedom, but with freedom comes responsibility. What I also find really interesting about Sven is the fact that he has an eye for everyone. He always kept an eye not only for the Berliners, but also the diverse people that are here in Berlin. And it's also an inspiration for him, the connection with those people. Sven is more than a photographer or a gatekeeper or just an icon. He's also more than just a bouncer at Berghain. What stands out for me the most about the whole story around Sven is the transformation. Not only that he went through himself from being a shy kid to being inspired by punk and new wave, but it stands really aligned with how Berlin went through the time in the last decades. Whilst many only see him at the door of Berghain, there is much more to the character that is Sven. For me, his whole story, what it means to be a bouncer as well. A bouncer isn't just standing there to see who he lets inside and who he doesn't let inside. There's also part of here in where you create an atmosphere, but you also want to make sure that the people that do go inside are safe and that they belong there, but also the other way around. Berlin's club scene is not for everyone. It's raw, it can be hard at times. And that's also the responsibility of a bouncer, to make sure that you create a safe space. And also for his photography, he stands aligned with what Berlin is. It's raw, it's intense, and I really just enjoy his work. So yeah, with this I hope I have given you a little bit of insight of who Sven is, what he stands for, and how Sven is just an icon overall for Berlin. I hope you liked the video. Leave a like, subscribe, that would help me out a great deal. And then there is nothing else to say than big hug, much love, and then I see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao.